And stay with me, hymn number 286.
Reading according to Luke, chapter 23, verses 1 through 25. Then the assembly rose as a body and brought Jesus before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying,
"Found this man, perverting our nation, inviting us to pay taxes to the emperor, and saying that he himself is the Messiah."
Then Pilate asked him,
"Are you the king of the Jews?"
He answered.
"You say so."
Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds,
"I find no basis for an accusation against this man."
but they were insistent and said,
"He stirs up the people by teaching throughout all of Judea, from Galilee where he began even to this place."
When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent Jesus off to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at the time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had been wanting to see him for a long time, because he had heard about him and was hoping to see him perform some sign. He questioned him at some length, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by vehemently, accusing him. Even Herod and the soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. And they put an elegant robe on him and sent him back to Pilate. The same day, Herod and Pilate became friends with each other. Before this, they had been enemies. Pilate then called together the chief priests, the leaders, and the people, and said to them,
"You brought me this man as one who was perverting the people. And here I have examined him in your presence and have not found this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. Indeed, he has done nothing to deserve death. I will therefore have him flogged and release him."
Then they all shouted out together,
"Away with this fellow! Release Barabbas for us."
This was a man who had been put in prison for an insurrection that had taken place in the city and for murder. Pilate, wanting to release Jesus, addressed them again, but they kept shouting.
"Crucify, crucify him."
A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no ground for the sentence of death. I will therefore have him flogged and release him." Oh, sorry, I read your line. But they urgently kept demanding with loud shouts that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave his verdict that their demand should be granted. He released the man they asked for, the one who had been put in prison for insurrection and murder, and handed Jesus over as they charged. To me, the truly terrifying moment in Good Friday, the moment of purest evil, has always been not the crucifixion or the moment the soldiers rolled the dice to divide up Jesus' clothes, but the moment here, when a crowd of people so easily unite around hatred. We're no strangers, as people living in the United States in 2019, power of hate to unite a group of people. It's effective, after all. It is surprisingly easy to begin to hate those who we have been taught are not worthy of our love and compassion. And now with social media, it's even easier to hate people publicly while maintaining our own anonymity. We spent the whole of Lent thinking about immigration and migration. Remember, we reviewed the history of this country of who we've been taught at certain times was worthy of love and worthy of hate, whether it was enslaved Africans, Chinese immigrants, Irish and Southern Europeans, Latin and Central and Southern Americans. We always seem to find someone who we can hate. It's easy, so easy to learn to hate. And our human institutions, our laws and procedures are only as good as us, which is kind of a scary thing. Pilate and Herod found no reason to kill Jesus, but he was hated, and that was enough. Enough to change the verdict, enough to determine the outcome. If you found yourself deeply engaging in our Lenten study, perhaps God is calling you to linger in the courtroom this Holy Week, to ask who is vulnerable around me, who have I been taught to hate, who is not being served by the laws of this land, and how might I use my privilege to help others? And maybe when we've considered to act, to change the way we live and the human systems in which we participate, to admit that we too have learned to hate.
Jesus asked us to take care of the poor and oppressed, but we are too concerned with our own power and wealth. Jesus asked us to share in his ministry, but we can always find an excuse not to help. Jesus asked us to keep awake, but we find our sleepy eyes too heavy to hold open. Let us pray. Jesus,
as we walk with you through this last week of your life, we are overwhelmed by your love for us and for all people. We confess that we have not always believed we deserved your love. We confess that we have not always freely given your love. We confess that we have fallen asleep just when you asked us to stay awake. Forgive us, we pray, and form us in the image of your love.
this is the good news. God's love is for all of us. God's forgiveness is given freely.
Make us new in your love, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Please remain seated, and we will sing Jesus Remember Me, hymn number 285.
Hear the Gospel according to John, chapter 19, verses 16 to 30. Then he handed him over to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus and carrying the cross by himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on either side, with Jesus between them.
Pilate also had an inscription written and put on the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this inscription because the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, in Latin, and in Greek. Then the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate, "Do not write the King of Jews, but this man said, 'I am King of the Jews.'" Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written."
When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts, one for each soldier. They also took his tunic. Now the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from the top. So they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but cast it lots, for it is to see who will get it." This was to fulfill what the scripture says, "They divided my clothes amongst themselves, and for my clothing they cast lots." And that is what the soldiers did.
Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his own home. After this, when Jesus knew that all was now finished, he said, in order to fulfill the scripture, "I am thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was standing there. So they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. I invite our adult choir to come forward to sing, "Father, Forgive Them."